Hello, I'm Ann Willett,
And I'm Morgan Garland.
and we're here from Escanaba High School competing with the Economic Research Team.
Today, we're going to be talking about the balance of trade in the United States.
Introduction. The United States is one of the biggest trading partners of many countries around the world. These countries include China, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and many other countries. The United States' trading ability has had ups and downs over the country's entire history. We will be discussing the history of trade in the United States here in this presentation.
History of trade in the United States. The United States began trade almost immediately after we became an independent nation. In the beginning, we didn't have much to trade. We began by only exporting lumber, fish, and stone. Because of the little amount of exports we sent out, our country was dependent on other countries at the start.
Trade in the 20th and 21st centuries. Advancing into the 1900s, the United States' trade exports began to exceed imports. By the 1980s, the trade gap began sinking. Many US citizens were employed, and we had many exports being sent to other countries. In the early 2000s, our economy started hurting. People started to buy products from other countries, which hurt our economy. People then started to lose their jobs.
How foreign trade affects the economy. Trade makes an efficient impact on the GDP of the US. If we import more goods than we export, our GDP will be lower than if we have more exports going out. Recently, we have been importing more than we have been exporting. This has caused a trade deficit rather than a trade surplus. For for a country's economy to survive, it depends a lot on if the country can stay in a trade surplus longer than in a trade deficit. Countries are always bouncing between trade deficits and surpluses, but what matters is staying in those trade surpluses.
The winners of trade. China has been dominating the world of trade for about 30 years. The rate at which China sends out exports is way higher than their intake of imports. In 2019, China's GDP reached $22.5 trillion, the largest in the world. China has a huge trade surplus over the United States. The United States consumes more of China's products than our own.
The effect COVID-19 has had on trade. In November 2019, COVID was really starting to take a toll on China and the rest of Asia. But it didn't take effect in other countries in the Western Hemisphere until around February of 2020. When the virus hit the United States hard in March, everything was locked down and that halted trade around the world. No one was allowed to travel between or even within their own countries.
Growing the US economy. When we are taking more products from other countries, it helps their economies and weakens ours. As citizens of the US, we need to start buying things made in the United States, rather than foreign countries. When we stop supporting businesses in the US, more people will lose their jobs. As more people lose their jobs, poverty rates in the United States will start to grow. A sign of a struggling economy are a rise in poverty rates and a decrease in annual GDP. These two things are indirectly caused by trade deficits.
Conclusion. The United States has many more trade deficits than trade surpluses. This doesn't reflect our whole country though. The United States economy is still one of the strongest in the world, even if our trade isn't as strong as it could be.
Thank you for your time. This is our presentation.